Hello everyone, good morning. I am Vanessa Joy Prutes and we are now at lesson 12 and my topic is all about the first call for children. Convention on the Rights of the Child adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations on November 20, 1989. So the Convention on the Rights of the Child or CRC is the most universally accepted human rights instrument ratified by every country in the world except two. So the convention incorporates the full range of human rights, civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights of children into one single document. So in 1989, world leaders decided that children needed a special convention just for them because people under 18 years old often need special care and protection that adults do not. So the importance of the provision of first call for children is the child has the right to protection from all forms of exploitation prejudicial to any aspects of the child's welfare. So no child shall be subjected to torture, cruel treatment, or punishment, unlawful arrest, or deprivation of liberty. So there are 41 article on the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So I will discuss it to you guys one by one. So the first article is the Article 1. For the purposes of the present convention, a child means every human being below the age of 18 years unless under the law applicable to the child majority is attained earlier. So, sa Article 1 is it defines children as all human beings below 18. So the convention takes no position on the life of an unborn child, but it says that all children have the rights set out in the convention until their 18th birthday. So, Article 2 naman is no child shall be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his or her privacy, family, home, or correspondence. The child should be protected from unlawful attacks on his or her honor and reputation. Parents have the prime responsibility for the upbringing and development of the child. So, state parties shall take all the appropriate measures to ensure that the child is protected against all forms of discrimination or punishments on the basis of the status, activities, express opinions, or beliefs of the child's parents, legal guardians, or the family members. And for the Article 3, in all actions concerning children, whether undertaken by public or private social welfare institutions, courts of law, administrative authorities, or legislative bodies, the best interests of the child shall be a primary consideration. So the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislator or of the executive when the legislator cannot be convened against domestic violence. And for the Article 5, states parties shall respect the responsibilities, rights, and duties of parent or, where applicable, the members of the extended family or community as provided for by local custom, legal guardians, or other persons legally responsible for the child to provide in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child, appropriate direction and guidance in the exercise by the rights recognized in the present convention. So Article 5 introduces the idea that children should be able to exercise their rights as they acquire the competence to do so. So states should take this right into account when establishing minimum ages on particular issues. So this article and the convention as a whole places parent center stage in the child's development. And for the Article 6 is state parties recognize that every child has the inherent of life. So state parties shall ensure to the maximum extent possible the survival and development of the child. And for the Article 7, the child shall be registered immediately after birth and shall have the right from birth to a name, the right to acquire a nationality as far or as possible, the right to know and be cared for by his or her parents. So state parties shall ensure the implementation of these rights in accordance with their national law and their obligations under the relevant international instruments in this field. So in particular, where the child would otherwise be stateless. Article 8, state parties undertake to respect the right of the child to preserve his or her identity, including nationality, name, and family relations as recognized by the law without unlawful interference. So, in Article 8, it protects children's right to preserve their identity, including their nationality, name, and family relations. So, in addition, states are required to help children regain any aspect of their identity that has been taken away from them illegally. Next, Article 9, state parties shall ensure that a child shall not be separated from his or her parents against their will, except when competent authorities subjected to judicial review determine, in accordance with applicable law and procedures, that such separation is necessary for the best interest of the child. So, state parties shall ensure that the child shall not be separated from his or her parents against their will. So, um, it except when competent authorities. So, state parties shall respect the right of the child who is separated from one or both parents to maintain personal relations and direct contact with both parents and regular basis, except if it is contrary to the child's interest. Article 10, in accordance with the obligation of the state parties under Article 9, applications by a child or his or her parents to enter or leave a state party for the purpose of family reunification shall be dealt with by parties in a positive, humane, and expeditious manner. So, children should be able to maintain relationships with their family when they are in separate countries. So, this is particularly true in deportation cases where strict immigrations rules can lead to a parent being deported from a given country when the child has the legal right to stay. In Article 11, states parties shall take measures to combat the illicit transfer and return of children abroad. Article 12, state parties shall assure to the child who is capable of forming his or her own views the right to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child, the views of the child's being given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. So in Article 12, the Convention establishes the rights of every child to freely express his or her views in all matters affecting her or him, and the subsequent right for those views to be given due weight according to the child's age and maturity. Article 13, the child shall have the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers, either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art, or through any other media of the child's choice. So the child shall have the right to freedom of expression. So The exercise of his right may be subject to certain restrictions, but this rather shall only be such as provided by law and are necessary. So for respect of the rights of reputations of others, or for the protection of national security, or of public order, or public health, or morals. In Article 14, state parties shall respect the right of the child to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Article 15, state parties recognizes the rights of the child to freedom of association and to freedom of peaceful assembly. Article 16, no child shall be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his or her privacy, family home, or correspondence, nor to unlawful attacks on his or her honor and reputation. Article 17, state parties recognize the important function performed by the mass media and shall ensure that the child has access to information and material from a diversity of national and international sources, especially those aimed at the promotion of his or her social, spiritual, and moral well-being and physical, mental health. And every person with disabilities has a right to respect for his or her physical and mental integrity on an equal basis with others. Article 18, state parties shall use their best efforts to ensure recognition and the principle that both parents have common responsibilities for the upbringing and development of the child. In Article 19, state parties shall take all appropriate legislative, administrative, social, and educational measures to protect the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury or abuse, neglect or negligent treatment, maltreatment or exploitation, including sexual abuse, while in the care of parents, legal guardians, or any person who has the care of the child. So the state shall take all legislative and administrative, social, and educational measure for the protection of the child from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury, abuse, neglect, maltreatment, or uh, exploitation. In Article 20, a child temporarily or permanently deprive his or her family environment or in whose own best interest cannot be allowed to remain in that environment shall be entitled to special protection and assistance provided by the state. Article 21, state parties that recognize and or permit the system of adoption shall ensure that the best interest of the child shall be paramount considerant, and they shall recognize the inter-country adoption may be considered as an alternative means of the child's or if the child cannot be placed in a foster or an adoptive family of cannot in any suitable manner be cared for the child's country or of origin. So it ensures that the child concerned by inter-country adoption enjoys safeguards and standard equivalent to those existing in the case of national adoption. Article 22, state parties shall take appropriate measures to ensure that a child who is seeking refugee status or who is considered as a refugee in accordance with applicable international or domestic law and procedures shall, whether unaccompanied or accompanied by his or her parents or by any other person, receive appropriate protection and humanitarian assistance in the enjoyment of applicable rights set forth in the present convention and in other international human rights or humanitarian instrument to which the said states are parties. Article 23, the state parties recognize that a mentally or physically disabled child should enjoy a full and decent life in conditions which ensure dignity, promote self-reliance, and facilitate the child's active participation in the community. Article 24, state parties recognize the right of the child to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health and to facilities for the treatment of illness and rehabilitation of health. State parties shall strive to ensure that no child is deprived of his or her right of access to such health care services. Article 25, state parties recognizes the right of a child who has been placed by the competent authorities for the purposes of care, protection, or treatment of his or her physical or mental health. The periodic review of the treatment provided to the child and all other circumstances relevant to his or her placement. Article 26, state parties shall recognize for every child that the right to benefit from social security, including social insurance, and shall take their necessary measures to achieve the full realizations of this right in accordance with their national law. So in Article 26, the child has the right to benefit from a social security. Article 27, state parties recognize the right of every child to a standard of living adequate for the child's physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development. Article 28, it says that children and young people have the right to education no matter who they are, regardless of race, gender, or disability, if they are in detention or if they are a refugee. In Article 29, state parties agree that the education of the child shall be directed to the development of the child's personality, talents, and mental physical abilities to their fullest potential. And Article 20 of the Convention establishes the right of the indigenous child to use his or her own language. In order to implement this right, education in the child's own language is essential. In Article 31, every child has the right to rest and leisure, to engage in play and recreational activities appropriate to the age of the child, and to participate freely in cultural life and the arts. In Article 32, the child shall be protected from economic exploitation and from performing work that is hazardous to his or her life and development. And for the Article 33, the child shall be protected from illicit use of narcotic drugs. In Article 34, state parties undertake to protect the child from all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse. For these purposes, state parties shall in particular take all appropriate national, bilateral, and multilateral measures to prevent. In Article 35, it requires all states to take appropriate measures to prevent the abduction, sale, or traffic of children. It is a positive obligation, which means that states must take deliberate steps to prevent such crimes from occurring rather than only reacting once such crimes have taken place. So in Article 36, children must be protected from all forms of activities that can harm their development. In Article 37, children who break the law should not be treated cruelly and not imprisoned with adults. They should also be able to contact their families. And for Article 38, the states shall take all feasible measures to protect and care for children affected by armed conflict. In Article 39, state parties shall take all appropriate measures to promote physical and psychological recovery and social reintegration of a child victim of any form of neglect, exploitation, or abuse, torture, or any form of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishments or armed conflicts. In Article 40, the UNCRC says that when a child or young person gets legal help, they should get it without being discriminated against in any way. In Article 41, nothing in the present convention shall affect any provisions which are more conducive to the realization of the rights of the child and which may be contained in the law of a state party or international law in force for the state. So, human rights to be respected and protected for every child under the age of 18 years of a child as every human being below the age of 18 years unless the national law considers majority attained at an earlier age. So that's all of my report and thanks for listening. Thank you.